In the name of God. In the previous session, we talked about complex implicational universal. Now we want to continue that discussion. On the other hand, adding conditions to make an implicational universal with exception into an exceptionless universal may turn out to be unproductive if the additional conditions don't have anything to do with the universal. Dreyer gives the example of the implicational universal verb if verb object, then noun relative. There is only one exception to this case. The family of Chinese languages are not in this way. They are verb object, but they are not non-relative. Hence, any property that Chinese accidentally has may be added to the antecedent to make the universal exceptionless. Changing the universal would make it exceptionless, but it would not help to account for the exceptions. The logical structure of the implicational universal implies a deeper set of dependencies between the grammatical properties found in the universal. For that reason, it is worth complicating implicational universals to make them exceptionless only if there is reason to believe that the additional complications play a role in explaining the exceptions that are removed. The second reason that Hawkins has argued for more complex implicational universal is that by combining individual universals, one can discover larger patterns that underlie individual implicational universals. These larger patterns, which can be found with sets of simple implicational universals as well, will concern us for the rest of this chapter and most of the following chapter. Dear student, one of the terms which are of vital importance in typology is competing motivations. This is very important. You as a typologist, you should know the concept of competing motivation and their function. Please pay attention to this part. If one examines all of the Greenberg's universals that refer to adjective, noun order, a striking pattern emerges. Here we have some of the Greenberg's universal. If one examines all of the Greenberg's universal that refer to adjective, noun order, Greenberg in three of his universal mentioned the adjective, noun order, which are the universal 5, 17, and 18. Based on the universal 5, Greenberg's 5 universal, we have such a implicational universal. If subject, object, verb, and noun genitive, then noun adjective. Universal 17. If verb, subject, object, then noun adjective. If noun demonstrative, then noun adjective. Both derivable from the universal 18 that if noun number, then noun adjective. Through this matter, we want to define the competing motivations. In all of the implicational universals involving adjective, noun order, like these universals, one finds the ordered noun adjective is the implicatum of the universal. If the contrapositive of these universals were taken, they would all have the order adjective noun in the implicants, like this. If adjective noun, then not subject, object, verb, and noun genitive. If adjective noun, then not verb, subject, object. If adjective noun, then demonstrative noun. If adjective noun, then number noun. The generalization that covers these universals is that all implicational universals whose implicatum involves the order of noun adjective will have the order noun adjective as implicatum. And a complementary statement for contrapositives, Greenberg called this pattern dominance. Dear student, one of the terms which is so common in typology is the term dominance, the concept of dominance. Here, based on that universal, the noun adjective is dominance. What we mean by dominance? You should be able to define that. By dominance, we mean that the dominant order is the one that always occurs. That always occurs in the implicatum. I want to repeat it again. This is important. Dear student, here we define the concept of dominance. The dominant order is the one that always occurs. The dominant order is the one that always occurs in the implicatum. This is the meaning of dominant. You should know that. The dominant order is the one that always occurs in the implicatum. To say that some word order D is dominant is to say that implicational universal involving D or dominant will be of the form if X then D, or the contrapositive if not D then not X, and never of the form if X then not D, or D if D then not X. Intuitively, the dominant order can be thought of as the preferred order of elements, other things being equal. Okay, the dominant order is the preferred order of the element. Dominance can be read directly from the tetrachoric table. It is important. You should be able to read the dominance and to find the dominant order based on the tetrachoric table. Okay. Consider the table if adjective noun, then demonstrative noun. Here we have a tetrachoric table. Please pay attention to this. Here, based on this tetrachoric table, I can say that is implicational universal because 3 of that option are positive and 1 of them is minus. When we have such a situation, we know that is implicational universal because 3 of them are plus and 1 of them is minus. Therefore, it is implicational universal. It is the first point. Then I try to find the dominant order. Here we say that if noun adjective, then demonstrative noun or non-demonstrative. Both of them can occur when we have noun adjective. But when we have adjective noun, just then we have demonstrative noun, not non-demonstrative. The dominant order is the order that occurs with either possible order of the cross-cutting parameter. Thus, non-adjective is dominant, dear student. Then based on this table, please look at the table and look at this explanation. Based on this table, I can say that noun adjective is the dominant because it occurs with either demonstrative noun or non-demonstrative. It is plus in both conditions. Therefore, when in the tetrachoric table, two options of that parameter is plus and exists, that is dominant. Therefore, NA is dominant here because it comes with demonstrative noun and non-demonstrative. Therefore, it is dominant. The dominant order is the order that occurs with either possible order, with both of these possible order of the cross-cutting parameter. Thus, noun adjective is dominant because it occurs with either non-dominant, dominant noun or non-dominant. Whereas adjective noun here can occur with demonstrative noun only, not with non-demonstrative. Likewise, demonstrative noun here is dominant. Note also that with the universal relative noun and demonstrative noun, if relative nouns then demonstrative noun or non-demonstrative is the order the dominant. The orders that are not dominant, like an here, and non-dominant, are called recessive by Greenberg. Okay, based on this table, here noun adjective is dominant because it comes with both of these possible conditions. But here adjective noun is recessive because it just comes with demonstrative noun. And when we consider the table in based on these two features, demonstrative noun is dominant because it comes with non-adjective and adjective noun. And non-demonstrative is recessive because it just comes with the noun adjective. The status of a word order in an implicational universal is not the only evidence for dominance. The status of a word order in an implicational universal is not the only evidence for dominance. The dominant word order is generally more frequent cross-linguistically than its recessive opposite order. This is important. I try to repeat it again. The status of a word order in an implicational universal is not the only evidence for dominance. The dominant word order is generally more frequent cross-linguistically than its recessive opposite order. Okay. One of the features of dominant element is that they are frequent, they are common than recessive one. For example, demonstrative noun order occurs almost twice as frequently as non-dominant order. This is the dominant one, and this is the recessive one. This is more frequent than this one. The greater cross-linguistic frequency of demonstrative noun order doesn't necessarily follow from its being the implicatum of the implicational universal. The implicational universal if noun demonstrative, then noun relative, means that demonstrative noun will occur in both relative noun and noun-relative languages, but noun demonstrative will occur in the only noun-relative languages. But it could still be the case that noun demonstrative languages would outnumber demonstrative noun languages if the following imaginary situation held. Okay, based on the study of many languages, Greenberg finds that we have a 30 language which is demonstrative noun and noun relative, and 30 language which is demonstrative noun and relative noun. But we have 80 language which are noun demonstrative and noun relative. But we don't have any language which is noun demonstrative and relative noun. This is not exist, or it is rare. Here we have a table which in this table the dominance patterns for order universals are shown. Here we have the dominance, the number of universal in different studies, their frequency and their source. You know that just there was not just Greenberg to study the typology in different languages. Dreyer, Tomlin, Hawkins and others do that. For example, about the clausal elements like subject object, the Tomlin universal number 1, 1906 languages were subject object based on the Tomlin, and based on the Dreyer there were 91 language with this order. And the language with subject verb, the universal 5 and 17 based on Tomlin 86, and based on Dreyer 83 languages were in this way. Dear student, here N show the number of that language, and G show the genre of that language. VO, the languages which are verb object, are 5, 13, 21 and 25. But here those number which are italic like 17 are against this order, which Tomlin is considering for 102 language, find that 54 of them are in this way, and Dreyer found that with the study the 325 languages, 50% are in this way. And here you can see another phrasal element, for example, the number of universality and the frequency of them based on the study of different languages based on different person. You can look at them yourself to get the point. In this situation, noun demonstrative occurs in 80 languages, and the demonstrative noun occurs in only 60 languages, Kemper-Greenberg. Hence, the fact that demonstrative noun is indeed more common than noun demonstrative is an independent piece of evidence supporting the dominance of demonstrative noun. Here, based on that tetrachoric table, we try to show that the dominant element are more common and more frequent than the recessive one. Table 3.1, I mean this table, lists the word orders for which there is some evidence that one order is dominant and its opposite is recessive. Some orders in the table are probably not dominant. For example, there is only one implicational universal supporting dominance for each of preposition and genitive noun. And the cross-linguistic frequency for preposition for genera across areas is only 37%, the opposite that one would expect from the universal. VO or verb object has several universals supporting dominance and one universal questioning it. but the proportion of verb-object languages and verb-object genera differ drastically. Object-verb is more common in only 4 of 6 areas, and in one of them, North America, by only 1 genus. These counts must be taken with a grain of salt. Genus frequencies represent the linguistic states of the world some 4 millennia ago, apart from genera that have died out without trace, whereas language frequencies represent the current linguistic state of the world. It appears that at that earlier stage, there were significantly more object-verb languages, or at least more than survived to the present, and also significantly more genitive noun and pause languages. And this order happened to be strongly correlated with each other, as we will see immediately below. Hence, some of the variants in figures may represent the possibility that the proportions of language types have not reached a stationary distribution. Nevertheless, it is unlikely that a position order or object verb order display and dominance pattern. Okay, here, dear student, we want to define and introduce another term, which is harmony. Harmony is another important term. The other pattern that Greenberg discovered in his universal is harmony. This pattern is also derivable directly from the tetrachoric table, so it is less obviously manifested in the implicational universal. A word order on one parameter is harmonic with an order on the cross-cutting parameter if it occurs only with that other order. This is the meaning of harmony. You should be able to define the harmony. A word order on one parameter is harmonic with an order on the cross-cutting parameter. A word order on one parameter is harmonic with an order on the cross-cutting parameter if it occurs only with that other order. In the implicational universal, if adjective noun, then demonstrative noun, for example, adjective noun and demonstrative noun are harmonic. If adjective noun, then demonstrative noun are harmonic. And if and noun demonstrative and noun adjective are harmonic because they occur with each other. In a biconditional universal, okay, you should know the definition of harmony and harmonic, and you should be able to mention that. In a biconditional universal, preposition is harmonic with noun genitive, and vice versa. And pause is harmonic with genitive noun, and vice versa, because they come with each other. However, there is no dominant order in a biconditional universal, since each word order type occurs with only one word order type on the other parameter. Conversely, in an unrestricted universal, such as Greenberg's universal number 1, which we consider that as unrestricted because it happened in all of the languages, subjects almost always precede object. There is dominant order subject-object in this case, but there are no harmonic order because we have just one parameter. Therefore, we have no harmonic order. In other words, Greenberg's model of harmony leads to a complex set of pairwise harmonial relationship between word order patterns. These relationships are illustrated in figure 3.1 for the universal in Greenberg 1966 and Hawkins 1983, using an arrangement of word order types that will be applied to more recent analysis in 3.4. The figure is quite complex, but as we will see in 3.4, later attempts to simplify the relationships are problematic. The orders on the right-hand side of the figure 3.1 are closed level orders, and those on the left-hand side are phrasal order. The orders enclosed in the dotted region are those for a head with an noun phrase or preposition dependent, like genitive, standard of comparison, subject, object, prepositional object. The vertical stroke indicates harmony of a binary order parameter and its opposite. For example, the link between a and n and number unknown means that a n is harmonic with number, noun, and noun adjective is harmonic with number, noun number. Okay, this figure, through this figure, the harmonic relations between word order based on the evidence of Greenberg 1966 and Hawkins 1983 are shown. Okay, look at this figure. Okay, and now we have the phrasal elements and clausal elements. Here we explain this figure. I want to refer to them again. Okay. Greenberg model of harmony lead to a complex set of pairwise harmony relationship between word order patterns. These relationships are illustrated in figure 3.1. For the universal in Greenberg and Hawkins, using an arrangement of word order type that will be applied to a more central analysis in 3.4. The figure is quite complex, but as we will see in that figure, later attempts to simplify the relationship are problematic. The order on the right hand of the figure are closed level order, and those in the left hand side are phrasal order, like here. I try to mention them based on the figure. Okay. Dear student, those elements who are in this side on the right hand are clausal elements, and those who are in this side are phrasal element. Okay, then the orders enclosed in the dotted region are those for a head with an NP or PP dependent. Okay, those who are related to each other by this dotted, their head are noun, like here, this dotted element. Based on this, those are for a head with an NP or PP. The vertical stroke indicate harmony of a binary order parameter and its opposite. Okay. Here, dear students, through this line, we can understand that, for example, there is a harmony between number noun and relative noun, and harmony between relative noun and demonstrative noun. And here exists a harmony between adjective noun and adverbial noun, and between adverbial adjective and object verb. And here you can look at this harmony. This figure is just one example to better understanding how this matter, not more. Don't be confused with such a figure. Okay. The parameter SOV refer to Greenberg universal involving VSO versus SOV languages. The lines link two word order that are harmonic according to Greenberg's and Hawking's universal. The thickness of the line here, the thickness of the line represent the strength of the implicational relation in terms of Greenberg or Hawking's description. Thicker lines represent universal with fewer exceptions. Greenberg's, dear student, I don't want you to mention this figure in your summarization, and this figure is not important for your final exam. Just look at this to be familiar with this matter. Greenberg's analysis illustrates the next step in a typological analysis. Whereas an implicational universal describes a relationship between just two parameters or maybe 3 or 4, in the case of complex implicational universal, concepts like dominance and harmony describe a relationship between a large number of parameters in a single strike. The concept of dominance, for example, defines a relationship between a particular word order type and any other parameter that is involved with it. Many of these deeper and broader typological concepts can be recast in terms of a generalization over implicational universal. However, they can also be directly rid of tetrachoric tables or other descriptive representations of the distribution of a test and language types. As more of these broader concepts have been discovered and employed, they have replaced the implicational universal as typological generalization. Okay, another name for implicational universal are as typological generalization. Greenberg considers both dominance and harmony to operate in explaining word order pattern. He proposes the following generalization. Okay, based on these two concepts. A dominant order may always occur, but its opposite, the recessive, occur only when a harmonic construction is likewise present. You should know that. A dominant order may always occur. Dominant order may always occur, but its opposite, the recessive, occurs only when a harmonic construction is likewise present. Greenberg's generalization is one of the earliest examples of an important type of explanation of cross-linguistic variation, the concept of competing motivations. This is very important. Competing motivation models describe the interaction of universal typological principles or motivations in order to account for the existence of variation in language type. Here we have the definition of competing motivation. Competing motivations models describe the interaction of universal typological principles, the interaction of universal typological principles or motivations in order to account for existence of variation in language types. This is the definition of competing motivation. It is very important. The interaction of universal typological principles or motivation in order to account for the existence of variation in language types. The motivations are generally functionally based in typological analysis. But the competing motivations model doesn't require the motivation to be functional. Competing motivations such as dominance and harmony are not strictly functional. Also, functional explanations have been offered for them. In a competing motivations model, no one language type is ideal. In a competing motivations model, no one language type is ideal, wholly motivated, because the different principles governing the existence of language types are in conflict, are in competition. In Greenberg's word order analysis, some word orders such as noun adjective are motivated by dominance, while other non-adjective or adjective noun order is motivated by harmony in terms of its alignment with the order of other modifiers. Since for some modifiers, modifier noun order is dominant, and for other, noun modifier order is dominant. A language cannot be harmonic without having some recessive order. However, an order is predicted not to be both recessive and disharmonic at the same time. We can have any language which is simultaneously recessive and disharmonic. The value in competing motivation models for typology is that they can account for both variation in language types and also frequency of language types across the world. Thus, competing motivations provide an important class of element explanation for both typological variation and constraints on the variation. However, it should not be thought that in, say, an noun-adjective language, only dominance is part of its grammar of modifiers, and in an adjective noun language, only harmony is part of its grammar of modifiers. The motivations are ultimately functional in origin and are present for all speakers of all languages. Competing motivations influence the convention of grammar of a particular language and can alter the convention in the process of language change, but they are not part of the conventions of a particular language at a particular time pursued. All speakers have all motivation as part of their social and cognitive context. Competing motivation analysis can exclude certain logically possible types and therefore are not necessarily vacuous. In Greenberg's analysis of word order, one logically possible type is excluded, the type in which the two word order are disharmonic and both recessive. This does not exist. We don't have any language which is both disharmonic and both recessive. This type is, of course, the one type excluded by implicational statement of the word order pattern. In general, we may characterize a non-vacuous competing motivation model as one in which satisfaction of all motivation simultaneously is logically impossible. Dear student, you should know this laws. Satisfaction of all motivations simultaneously is logically impossible. Some allowed logically possible types can be attributed to satisfaction of one motivation. Some allowed logically possible types can be attributed to satisfaction of one motivation. The other allowed logically possible types can be attributed to satisfaction of another motivation. The prohibited logically possible type represent the satisfaction of no motivation. You should know that about these 4 laws about the competing motivation. At this point, the value for typology of non-vacuous competing motivation analysis should be clear. They allow for universal characterization of typological variation. All languages, and therefore all human beings, have both underlying motivations attributed to them. A particular language at a particular historical stage has conventionally resolved the competing motivation in one of the several possible acceptable ways. Moreover, languages can change over time, reflecting a reassertion of one motivation at the expense of the other. Nevertheless, certain possible types are excluded, or at least assumed to be very rare by virtue of satisfying no motivation. Okay, dear student, I think the concept of this session were hard to understand, and you should look at the video many times to understand them, and you should read the booklet to get the point. I think it is enough until this session. Please look at the video and try to understand the terms. If you had any question, please ask me through the WhatsApp group, and I think it is not so easy to get the point. You should look at them many times to get the point. I know that, but you should understand, for example, the competing motivation and other terms, harmony and other one. Thank you. Please do the task and pay attention to the details of each session for your final exam. Thank you. In the previous session,